Videos of stuck Russian tanks and armored vehicles and muddy soldiers in ragged uniforms have spread to the media around the world. A military force strengthened by propaganda has extended the planned war of several days to several hundred days, and there is no end in sight. However, you would be surprised by the information, which is the most effective part of the Russian army. It has to do, first of all, with drones and the fact that the vast majority of Ukrainian drones were destroyed or shot down during the bloody war. That is, the Army for Radio-Electronic Warfare, the electronic warfare units of the Russian army, made the Ukrainian drones have a single-digit number of flights and shoot down or capture from 70 to 90% of them. What is the secret? At the beginning of the war in the Kyiv region, the Russian army left behind the cabin of the famous electronic warfare system, Krasuka 4. This mistake was used first by the Ukrainian army, which captured the cabin and, of course, photographed it and sent it to the United States of America for study. One of the reasons for this mistake of the Russian army lies in the fact that Krasuha belonged to one of the brigades for radio-electronic warfare that are directly subordinated to the commands of military areas, not armies or battalion battle groups, and were left behind due to the well-known poor coordination of the Russian army. Meanwhile, perhaps the army's only weakness for radio-electronic warfare came to the fore. They need to catch up with the main force's movement pace during rapid maneuvering. However, the situation changed when the Russian army withdrew from the north of Ukraine and concentrated all its forces in the south. With enough time to set up and go to work, Russian electronic warfare complexes managed to kill enemy drones for months completely. Jamming of GPS signals, then mobile phone networks and radio communication managed to seriously paralyze many defense operations of the armed forces of Ukraine. At one point, it reached the level that the Russians destroyed and disabled as much as 90% of Ukrainian drones. The small drones had a lifespan of 3 flights, and the Bayraktar had 6. The most powerful and dangerous is the already mentioned Krasuka system, models 2 and 4, which have a range of up to 250 and 300 kilometers, respectively. They turn off anti-aircraft radars and even ground-based radars. The biggest problem these systems cause is that they interfere with the GPS signal, thus returning drones and missiles to the pre-satellite era guidance. Krasuka interfered even with the operation of satellites in the lower orbit. Still, at the beginning of the war, he could not do anything to the Starlink system of the famous billionaire Elon Musk. Starlink worked and works without problems, because the Russians have yet to figure out a way to block or compromise the operation of this service. Torn and SB-SFET are other systems worth mentioning, which locate military radio communication systems and disable or jam them. Then there are the Bussines and Arjatel's radio and satellite jammers. The most technologically fascinating, and thus, the most dangerous detection system for Russian adversaries is Moskva 1. It precisely locates targets such as warships or aircraft by collecting the reflection of signals from commercial radio and TV stations. You heard that right. The range of the system is about 400 kilometers, and at that distance, any local or national television or radio signal can be lethal. And this is data from Western sources. At the UMEX 2024 trade show in the United Arab Emirates, a U.S. official announced that the situation is being closely monitored and work is being done to reduce the effect of Russian electronic warfare units. The main reason is the use of U.S.-made drones in the Russian-Ukrainian war, specifically drones from the RQ or Reaper series. However, the manufacturer, General Atomics, offered the drones to Ukraine unofficially because, by the beginning of February 2024, the State Department had yet to approve the sale of Reapers to Ukraine. The main reason is the fear of the State Department that Russian electronic warfare systems could damage, shoot down, or worse, take over the controls and capture the famous RQ-9. But back to the Russian electronic warfare units. A human factor is one of the most important facts, especially since we are discussing the Russian army. Members of electronic warfare units come from the ranks of engineers and technicians, It is simply impossible to mix military specialties, which is the case with other branches of the Russian army and leads to catastrophic losses in the field. Also, the Army commander for radio-electronic operations stayed the same. Lieutenant General Yuri Lastochkin has held the post of commander of the radio-electronic branch since 2014. His name is not on the list for purges or responsible for losses of lives of Russian soldiers. This tells us that in every aspect, technical, personnel, and strategic, the Russian units for electronic warfare represent the most effective part of the armed forces of the Russian Federation. And it will be invincible for a long time in the battle of electronic beams in the Russian-Ukrainian war.